Oh, I know that sound. It's time for the Beer and News Report. Hi, and welcome to the Beer and News Report. Cheers. Today, I'm drinking Pernicious IPA by Wicked Weed Brewing. This is your typical IPA taste, which is very hoppy, very bitter, and I'm sure for IPA lovers, this beer would be fine. I don't like IPAs. So in order for me to finish this beer, I've got to cut it with my cutter, Michelob Ultra. So I'm just going to pour that in here, and this will cut the hoppiness down and make it drinkable for me. Of course, this means I have to do a double show today, but you know what? I'm okay with that. Cheers. I'm going to change up things for this show, and today I'm going to answer questions from my viewers. Now, some of these are old questions, as this is the first time I'm doing this, but even if it is old questions, it's still good, right? Cheers. Okay, the first question comes from my nephew, Gary Maurice, and he asked, I got a new show idea for you, Electoral College versus popular vote, and the effect of the census. I listened to an interesting podcast that discussed how the changes in the House and Electoral College due to the census results would have changed the number of electoral votes Biden would have received had the census been taken pre-election. The popular vote obviously would not have changed at all because of the census, but the electoral vote would have. Biden still would have won, but by 3 less electoral votes. This resparks the debate over ending the Electoral College. Hey, Gary, that's a great question. But before I answer that question, you may be wondering why I'm starting with a family member first. Well, I have 74 subscribers, and most of them are family members. Also, they know me, and they have no fear of asking me something or giving me their opinion. Okay. Now, for the Electoral College. This has been an ongoing debate for decades. I was going to briefly answer this question and drop the subject, but as I did more research, I see that there's a whole show on this subject. So, the second half of this, or the second show, I should say, will be about the Electoral College. But what is the Electoral College? Basically, when America started, it was too hard to count up all the votes and get that information to Congress. So they set up a system where people would represent a state and say how their region voted. There are 538 people in the Electoral College. Basically, it is the senators and the representatives of every state plus 3 people from Washington, D.C. This would have been fine because each state has 2 senators and a representative should roughly represent the same amount of people. Well, that was true when the Electoral College first started, but then in 1929, the Permanent Apportionment Act was passed, and that limited the size of the House of Representatives to 435 people. But why limit the size of the House of Representatives? Do you have any guesses? I'll give you a second. Cheers. If you remember your history, the South was still recovering from the Civil War, and the population in the North was growing fast. So the South set limits so they would still have some power in the elections. At a minimum, each state gets 1 representative. So a small population state like Wyoming or Vermont would get 1 representative. But states with big populations like California and Texas, they're limited to how many representatives they can have. For instance, California has 53 representatives for a population of roughly 40 million people. So each representative represents about 755,000 people. Now, Wyoming has a population of 590,000 people, and it only has 1 representative. So that means that each California representative has 165,000 more people than Wyoming. So in totality, 8,745,000 Californians don't really have an equal vote. So why is that important? Because we are noticing that someone can get elected president without winning the popular vote. Fresh on everyone's mind is President Donald Trump, who did not win the popular vote. Was he the only one? Well, some of you probably remember the 2000 election where George W. Bush also didn't win the popular vote. In total, there have been 5 presidents who did not win the popular vote. Can you name all of them? Pause this video to think about it. I'm going to have a drink. Cheers. Okay, the 5 presidents who didn't win the popular vote are Donald Trump, George W. Bush, Benjamin Harrison, Rutherford Hayes, and John Quincy Adams. Well, let me ask you this. Out of those 5, who had the cleanest election, meaning the lowest political undertakings? If you need a second, pause the video. You ready? 3, 2, 1. The answer, Donald Trump. Now, if you want to find out why, you're going to have to watch my upcoming show on the presidents who didn't win the popular vote. Now, the second half of the email question brought up the census and how it's affected the Electoral College. But that's what it's designed to do. The Electoral College tries to represent the population, and the census is currently the only means of getting that information. So I agree that the Electoral College doesn't fully represent the population of the United States. As for the census, well, it's doing what it's supposed to do. I understand you might not like that the Electoral College is drifting away from what you think for fairness, but that's where we get our population statistics. Now, did the census takers have enough time to reach everyone during this pandemic? That's a whole new story for a different show. Cheers. Okay, next question. These are from my fourth show called BNR COVID-19. In the background of that show were bookshelves filled with all my games. I actually got a lot of emails, but none of them asked about COVID. They all wanted to know about my games. So for instance, Rita Guest wrote, I really like the pandemic games. Tony Kimple asked, what's your favorite game? Mitch Jersich wrote, I'm a board game, card game, dice game junkie as well. I'm wondering if you've ever played or even heard of the game Star Reporter. My absolute favorite. I like it even better than Monopoly. Another favorite is a baseball game called APBA. I played that morning, noon, and night in the summer. Finally, Kevin Collins wrote, good show, Art. I just have one bone to pick. I don't see Risk or Stratego in the background in a place of honor as much as we played those games as kids, LOL. That's a lot of questions. Let me go through them one by one. Rita, yes, Pandemic is a great game. I think it is already considered a classic and should be a part of anyone's gaming collection. Tony, it's hard to pick one game as my favorite, but if I had to, I'd probably pick Through the Ages. I mean, I really like that game. It's an engine building game. I mean, if I had to pick a strategy game, it would be Twilight Struggle. And if it's a deck building game, I'd go with Clank. If you asked my dad, he would say Rumacube is the greatest game ever. That's all he really wants to play. If you ask my sisters, they think the game is the best one and it's really easy to learn, highly addictive. And my cousin Kurt Morrow, he got me hooked on this new game called Trick Shot. It's awesome. I think even my brother would love to play it, and he hates board games, but he loves hockey. And this game is all about playing hockey. Now, Mitch, I've never heard of the game Star Reporter or APBA, but that's okay because most people I talk to haven't heard of my games either. I'm just glad you're a board gamer, and hopefully this summer we can play APBA with some beers. Finally, Kevin Collins. He's an old buddy way back in my elementary school days. I used to play with Kevin and Kendall Turner and some other friends, and we would play the classic version of Risk all day long. And sometimes Stratego too, but Risk was the main one. Man, it would have been great to have my game collection back then. But I probably would have flunked out of school because I would have never stopped playing games, right? Cheers. Now, my best show was the interview of Dr. Aubrey de Grey. It has been viewed over 1,500 times, and I got a ton of comments on that one. Too many to go into, but the main theme was, what's the next expert you're going to get to interview? So I went out and I tried. You know, it's really hard to get an expert to be interviewed on my show if your show doesn't have a big following. Remember, I only got 74 subscribers. So I want to say cheers to Dr. Aubrey de Grey for coming on my show. He's a really nice guy. I really like him. The only thing I got coming in this arena, and this isn't for sure, is that my dad liked the show and he asked me to do some research for him. See, my dad's in his 90s, and if there's something out there that can make him feel younger, he wants me to check it out. So in doing my research, I came across a Joe Rogan show where he's interviewing Mel Gibson, who brought his dad to an institute in Panama being run by Dr. Neil Reardon. It turns out that Joe Rogan took his mom there too. So I looked into it. I filled out an application and they said my dad's a possible match. Now I have to get a health report from his doctor before they'll fully accept him, and that's in the works right now. But if he does get accepted, I'm going to go to Panama with him, and I think I'm going to make a show about the trip. And just so you know, they're completely booked until the end of the year. I mean, this is a high-end institute doing cutting-edge medical research. I hope he gets accepted. Cheers. Finally, I need to answer some questions viewers have been asking me about, and it's in regards to skits. You see, before the pandemic hit, I sent out a bunch of emails looking for actors to do skits. I also went to local colleges and posted up sign-up sheets in the theater department. I was getting to do some in-person group skits when the pandemic shut down Create TV studios. Now, this was a great area to do skits, and obviously with the pandemic, I couldn't have people over my house. The good news is we're rounding the corner on the pandemic. We're probably looking at 3 to 6 months before Create TV opens the studio back up. So I pulled out the old skits that I wrote up and I'm starting to plan them out. I'm cautiously talking to people who told me they were interested. And again, we're looking at the end of the year. So any of you who are watching this show and would like to be in a skit, comment or email me and I'll put you on the list. Don't worry if you've never acted. These skits are easy and short. Cheers. Well, that's it for the questions. I want to thank everyone that sent them in. I think this was fun. I also want to thank all my viewers and the comments they leave me. I like hearing what you thought about the show. So if you haven't commented on any of my shows, the next time you watch one, send me an email or leave me a comment. If you ask a question, maybe I'll put it in the next show. Always interested in what people are thinking about. Also, if you're in the San Jose area, look me up. Maybe we can have a beer or two and talk about some interests you have to do for a show. If you live in the San Jose area and like to be in a skit, let me know that too, because it's really hard to find people who want to act. Also, now that the pandemic seems to be coming to a close, Create TV Studios should be opening up, and hopefully we can do group skits instead of just doing Zoom skits. I got to tell you, the first time you get in front of the camera, it's a little scary. But after a couple times, it becomes old hat, and you want to push it to the limit. You just got to take that first step. You can do it. All right, I'm halfway done my beer, so that means it's time to go on to the next show. Again, if you want to contact me, I can be reached at this email address. If you like the show, click the like button. If you want to get notified of new shows, you hit that subscribe button and then click the bell icon next to it. You'll get a text of when my next show is being posted. Till then, keep your beer cold, the intro's hot. Cheers.